You're listening to That Gratitude Guy podcast with David George Brooke. That Gratitude Guy. Learn about how gratitude turns what you have into enough through stories of motivation and inspiration. Wherever you are in your life and whatever you're going through, That Gratitude Guy is here to help you achieve great things and live a happier, healthier life. Change the way you live today right here with David George Brooke. That Gratitude Guy, starting now.
Well, hi, everyone. Welcome to That Gratitude Guy podcast. I am David George Brooke, That Gratitude Guy, your host, and where my mission is to have guests that relate and recall moments of their lives where they are propelled and energized by utilizing the power of a gratitude mindset. The goal is to harness the power of gratitude and illustrate its many benefits. What you can expect is a deeper dive into gratitude's immense power, a gratitude tip of the show, or a gratitude nugget. You can always find ways to become a gratitude believer and maybe 1 to 3 takeaways from the show and specifically from the guest too. My podcast is broadcast on Transformation Talk Radio on the first and third Fridays of the month at 12:30 p.m. Pacific Daylight Time. And I always like to mention I do gratitude keynote speaking and gratitude coaching. You can reach me at www.thatgratitudeguy.com or my email, david@thatgratitudeguy.com. And the contact information for me as well as my guest will be and social media links will be in the show notes at the bottom. So let me get on to the most important part of the show, my guest, and I will introduce you to my guest, Ryan Pauley. Ryan Pauley is an attorney with a practice that focuses on plaintiffs and litigation. Ryan's personal injury practice is devoted to representing families, individuals who have been injured in automobile crashes or by a professional's negligence. Ryan takes tremendous pride in being a plaintiff's personal injury attorney. His services obtain justice for his clients and protects the community from entities who attempt to exploit the law rather than abide by it. Ryan provides cost-effective and practical legal representation for startup, developing, and established businesses in the area of business and employment law. Through these services, Ryan also represents businesses in a variety of transactional contexts, including the preparation of contracts, other legal documents, and corporate governance. Ryan, welcome to the show.
Thanks, David. Good to be here.
It's good to have you. And, I was thinking as I prepped for the show about how it's always about gratitude, but I also think I want to make sure every show we have a couple of tips that people can take away. I really like that show and I had this or that tip. And so I think maybe before we wrap up, I might ask you to put on your attorney hat as you normally wear it and give people maybe a couple of tips they can think, well, I learned about gratitude, but I also learned about something I should be doing that Ryan said that was really good to protect my legal side of things. So, but to start with, I always like to set up the context. So just relate to the audience how you and I met.
Boy, I think we met about 3 to 5 years ago, and it was through a kind of mutual group that we belonged to. And in the group, I remember one day that we go around and introduce ourselves, and you spoke about what it is you do, which is basically you're that gratitude guy is how I remember you specifically. And really, your whole message to us was you incorporate gratitude and help people incorporate gratitude into their lives and also into their businesses. So after speaking to you a couple times at the group, eventually, and I know that you also do coaching, and that's eventually how I've come to see you on a regular basis. And I remember it was right around Thanksgiving, and I just was knowing that I needed somebody to help me with my practice, with my personal life, just to be able to take the extra step that I needed to and to be accountable to. So I remember meeting with you at at the Seattle, at the Columbia Tower Club, CTC, and just immediately started to enjoyed your, what you told me about gratitude right off the bat, and just started working with you then. And since then, we've been seeing each other once a month, talking about, you help me with my practice, you help me with my personal life, and just really talk about this message of gratitude. So, yeah, we've had a relationship now for, somewhere between 3 to 5 years.
I think that's probably a good time frame, somewhere in that neighborhood. So if you think about that, I'm always interested in tips and things. And let's start, because I do want to have you give it a legal perspective later, because again, maybe some extra takeaways for the audience. But from a gratitude standpoint, if you think back about those 3 to 5 years, what are some things that maybe you and I discussed, or that I talked about gratitude, that you could use or say you've used as a sort of a mantra, or maybe an idea that you always remember every day? And how has gratitude kind of worked its way into your life, maybe since you and I met?
Yeah, I think it's, as far as how gratitude has helped me in my life, it's really, you hear a lot of times, don't sweat the small stuff, but the small stuff tend to be things that people tend to overlook and they're not grateful for. And these are actually, some people look at the small, they think it's small, but actually these are significant things, and they're not, at least I didn't appreciate them. I didn't really notice them as much. So I guess when I've started to work with you, I've become much more grateful for the things, the large things in my life that before I thought were maybe not as significant. And this can be, my health, the health of my family, that I have a job that provides for my family, that I have a job that I like, that when I go outside, it feels good to breathe in fresh air. It's these things that are huge in somebody's life that you just don't really realize until you say to yourself, well, I should just appreciate everything that's around me. And then it's kind of this, once you start appreciating things, you start realizing how much you actually have. And then you focus on what you have, and you realize what you don't have really doesn't mean that much. So it kind of really shifts the way that you look at the world in general. So
yeah, so true. And I think that it's really important, because anything that gets our focus going in the right direction. I heard somebody once in a talk say, we all get caught. I like this term. We all get caught up. We get caught up in the small things, and I don't have enough money to pay the paper out boy or something, like how important is that in the big scheme of things? So, but one of the things I'm really curious about is I know a lot about you and your cases and so forth. How about, and those are excellent points you just brought up too, because just even breathing fresh air, and then, the old thing about, my guest last week mentioned the comment about somebody had no shoes, but then he saw somebody had no feet. So it's so important to keep that perspective. And life is always a choice. I did a talk last night to Silicon Valley Group in California, and they were asking again about, well, how does this work, and why do you want to focus on this? And I said, it's always a choice. We always have a choice. But the thing I'm really curious about from your world is, how would that apply to, say, your clients? I feel like I've met some of these clients over the years because I've heard enough about them from car accidents and different things. But how about from the client perspective? Did you find that maybe this client, it's my favorite word, of course, gratitude and grateful, but maybe a client wasn't as grateful, or you didn't get enough money for them? Or were there things where you could kind of apply the template of gratitude and see some pros and cons through those different clients you've had?
Yeah, it's really interesting, because a lot of my clients go through traumatic injuries that change their lives. And I think I've said this to you before, David, but, if you really want to appreciate your life, don't go to a party, go to a funeral. Because when you go somewhere, such as a funeral, you look around and you see, death, lack of life, people upset, a loss of a family member. And when you see that, it makes you appreciate what you have, because you're looking at somebody who doesn't have that. And I think that a lot of my clients, even though they go through something that could change their life forever, it helps them see, hey, look, I might have lost X, but I have Y. And, and they might not have noticed Y before, but now it helps them realize that. And I think that, in the time of tremendous loss, you can, good things can come from it, right? And I think that one of those things is that you learn to appreciate all that you have. And again, I think that has to go with hand in hand with gratitude, right? Just being thankful for, having a brother or sister or a mom or a dad that's alive, And so that's why I think that's one way that I've seen it from an emotional perspective, how I've seen kind of gratitude affect my clients.
Well, and I think that we've always said, at least it's been said, I guess, is that in order to really appreciate up, you have to kind of see down.
Yeah.
And I've mentioned probably on several podcasts already, but life is like a roller coaster, and it's never all up or all down. It's this series of ups and downs, and the ups are fantastic. The downs aren't any fun. And when you're down, everybody wants to be up, but where the lessons are really learned are in the downs.
Oh yeah.
And that's where you really get some of the best things that you can take through the rest of your life. But I'm curious about, if I think about one, this is a recent case of yours and how this impacted you. And that is the person that, man, just, it wasn't enough. No, she's going to pay. It's going to be, they're going to have to get this much money, and they're going to have to go. And just really, I just remember thinking, wow, who is that person? How did that impact you? Or it was like, no matter what you did, it was the pound of flesh that was just like, man, did that impact you in a way that you're thinking of like, you should be grateful for what you have? Or
yeah,
that was a strange case.
Yeah, no. And I think that sometimes people that want, all the recovery in the world isn't going to fix what has been taken from you, right? And they just don't, I don't think they'd be happy with it or without it. You have to be content with what you have right now, right? And things can be taken from you, but until your life is taken from you, you still have things, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that it's, that is people who have, I think, attitudes like that just lack just the simple gratitude of, the simple appreciation of what they have. Because people who tend to, in my experience, people who don't have any gratitude, tend to be those that, they just are always looking for something more, right? Yeah. And once you get that thing, the big house, the fancy car, more money in a settlement, that gives you about 10 minutes of satisfaction until you're back to square one saying, well, now I need this and now I need that. So, I mean, there's really two ways to look at things. One is to look at what you have and appreciate that, or two, to look at what you don't have and how that's affecting you. So it's, yeah, I mean, I don't know. And those are, I think, two fundamental thoughts of, you either have people that look at it the way that you do and that I try to be, or you have people that look at it the other way. Glass half empty.
Exactly. And I think, did you find in that particular case, you're trying to kind of pull out the stops, if you will? Like, wow, this is a tough one to try to convert, because no, she's going to have to go to, I just remember you sort of imitating, she's going to have to go to class. She's going to have to raise this much money. I want this. Did you find yourself kind of like, I got to pull out all the stops to get her to try to see to be reasonable?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because I think that in that situation, it was somebody who, I guess, wanted more, but then when the client eventually got it, she realized that there was so much more that she had before everything got resolved. So it was, and it's so complicated to be able to sympathize or to put yourself in that situation, just because, it wasn't me. It's hard. I can't understand what she's thinking because I'm not her or him, but it was just, once the person did receive what they were asking for, the attitude changed a little bit. So yeah, it was difficult. Well,
and when you think about putting yourself in somebody's shoes, everybody says you can't walk in somebody else's moccasins or walk in their shoes. But I've always said that you can walk a parallel path and have at least something that gives you a reasonable idea of what it is. I listen to a lot of podcasts when I go out and try to walk 8 to 10 miles a day. And ever since I started doing my podcast, I listened to a lot of podcasts to hear how they're doing it and found some great podcasts. I happened to come across one yesterday with Tim Ferriss, and he was interviewing Jerry Seinfeld. And he had some great tips. But one of the things is he talked about how he gets depressed every so often. And I think the average person would look at that, like maybe you would looked at that client and thought, what? Here's somebody who's worth hundreds of millions of dollars or whatever the number is, and had the most successful television show of all time and so forth, and a wife and 2 or 3 kids, and just, it seems like everything. But the same thing, I've mentioned this in my talks, if this is why I think happiness starts with gratitude. In order to really be happy, I think you have to be grateful. And I think that people look at people like Robin Williams and Chris Cornell and Kate Spade and Anthony Bourdain, some of these people that take their lives, and think, well, clearly money, power, fame, celebrity isn't all that it's cranked up to be, which is why I think gratitude is such a huge aspect of our lives when looked at and utilized and paid attention to with an attitude of gratitude regularly. And with that being said, Ryan, how would you tie that in with the family, with the wife and the girls?
I mean, that's such a large part of my life to be grateful for.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that, it's funny that you bring up Jerry Seinfeld. I mean, he's a guy who has everything. Everybody would
Exactly.
right?
Exactly.
So why should he be depressed?
Exactly.
And again, I mean, it means that it doesn't matter how much money you have, how much fame you have. We're all kind of susceptible to this, I always want more. I don't have enough. And the one way to get rid of that feeling is to turn it around on itself and say, hey, look, instead of thinking about what I don't have, let's think about what I do have. Mm-hmm. And I think and I've seen some advertisements for, I think what you're referring the podcast and what they talk to him about, but it doesn't, I guess it's surprising when you hear it immediately, but then when you think about it in the context of gratitude, like it's pretty powerful that even somebody like that,
exactly,
who has anything and everything, has, the same problems that you, me, anybody else on the street has. And he needs to use the same tools that we do, which is focus on what you have, be thankful, be grateful. And then that will help you get out of the funk.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I heard something the other day, which reminds me of that too, and I'm going to try to use this in talks as far as a little exercise. And they said, when you go see a tombstone, somebody said, what would you like written on your tombstone? But they said, go look at the tombstone. It says loving father, loving brother, sister, most beautiful parent of all time, and all these things. And they have these wonderful characteristics about these people who have passed away, and it's on the tombstone. It doesn't say CEO of ABC Corporation, 1.25 net worth $1 million and so forth. And so it really does come back to that, and that what makes people happy. Now, and you're an advocate of a gratitude journal, speaking of which, right?
Hey, look at this. Can you see it?
Oh, yeah. There. Oh, nice. Holy cow. Look how many of those gratitude journals.
Yeah, and these are all completed.
Oh, that's fantastic. And let me just hold one up for the viewing audience, the Brooker's Daily Gratitude Journal. As an advocate, it's interesting to me because this journal has become so much a part. And as you know, showing me all those journals and being a faithful gratitude journaler is that they last about 3 or 4 months. And you fill them up, and then I kind of put the dates on them, and I keep track of them. But it's interesting because I talk when I do my talks. And as I said, I did the talk as recently as last night. And I said, this is going to make you feel better. And you're going to focus on what you have. And if you think about it, it's like a dream. If you talk about it, it inspires you. But if you write about it, it empowers you. So I write, I am so grateful to Ryan Pauley for coming on my podcast and so forth. And it plants it. And so I've often been at my book table after a talk and have somebody that's just listened to me talk for 60 or 90 minutes about the aspects and benefits of a gratitude journal and the gratitude mindset. And the guy one day comes up and he looks through my journal and he thumbs through it and he says, man, you write in this every day. And I said, were you just listening to the talk? Did you pay attention? I said, no, I write in it occasionally. Now you, on the other hand, in the audience, you can just write every single day, but me, I just write occasionally. So, but it's that powerful. And there's something about they've proven that this pen and so on makes such a big difference to plant in the brain and so forth. So
yeah, it's amazing. A couple years ago, I remember talking to you, and you encouraged me to start listening to kind of motivational stuff on YouTube in the morning. And I listen to it a lot now when I work out, and so many, powerful, successful, important people do exactly what you've just explained. They wake up in the morning, they meditate, they write in a journal, they journal or, write about things they're grateful for. They exercise. And it's just it's one of these things you need to incorporate into your life if you want to have, a fulfilling life. And it's hard some days I miss it, but sometimes I'll go a week, or I remember I went a couple months during the pandemic without it. And I just, you feel down, you feel kind of crappy, and they're like, okay, I'm just going to commit to writing, each day. Mm-hmm. And slowly but surely, you build it back up, you start feeling better. So it's something you got to stick with. Right. But with anything.
And from your perspective, Ryan, I'm curious because I have some things I do. How did you find what helped you to be consistent? You mentioned you got away from it for a while in the pandemic and so forth, but were there any little tricks or tips that you did that kept you kind of focused on the gratitude journal every day?
Well, you have to have a routine, right? So I've had, and my routine's kind of changed over the years. It starts now, it used to be, I used to write in it before I'd go to bed. So I'd have a really good thought in my mind before I'd fall asleep. Now, I do it in the morning and I write what I'm thankful for, today. And then I also write what I think the 3 top highlights will be. And then the next day I go back and summarize what I was thankful for that day. So I think it's just about building a routine and incorporating it, every day, just like your morning cup of coffee or your 5 glasses of water.
Yeah. That's right.
You need to, like anything, it's work, but what is it? What's worthwhile to achieve is what's worthwhile to perceive is difficult to achieve. That's something I'm fumbling it, but I mean, so yeah, it takes work, but it's just a daily commitment to it. And some people do it, some people can't, but there's a lot of benefit from it.
And it's interesting. I've noticed in some of my workshops, I have people come up with their top 10 daily rituals, and then I'd compare notes and compile them all and send them out to the people to give people ideas.
Sure.
But most people have a top 10, at least maybe not on paper, but they have it in their mind, and they're going to get up. And one of the first things to do is make your bed so you get something accomplished. And then you take your shower, drink a big glass of water. You and I joke about water a lot. It's so important, but it gets you hydrated after kind of becoming dehydrated from sleeping all night. Write in the gratitude journal, make the cup of coffee, do some stretching, do some exercise, do whatever it might be, and then start your day. So I think everybody has some version of that, but it's something that, to me, the gratitude journal has become so much a part of my life, and to set the example for everybody else, which is so important. And I think it's just a matter of incorporating that in every single day and just making a habit out of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. So we're going to wrap up in a couple of minutes, and I just wanted to just take a little bit of the legal hat. What's 1 or 2 tips that attorney at law Ryan Pauley might say to people to keep in mind out there to, if you get in an accident, call an attorney, or just anything that might be 1 or 2 tips that might help just people that would think, gosh, that Ryan guy had some cool things to say.
Yeah, I guess I'll give one general piece of advice and then one specific piece of advice. So I always tell people, if you ever are asking yourself, I wonder if I should talk to a lawyer about this, you definitely need to talk to a lawyer. So it's always, if you think you do, you definitely do. Because it's always good. You never want to ask yourself, what if? What if I would have called a lawyer and talked to him or her about my problem? Would I have resolved it differently? So it's just worth the time to pick up the phone, and any attorney who is, worth his or her license will give you at least 30 minutes of their time without charging you.
Nice.
That, number 1, if you think you need a lawyer, you definitely need a lawyer. And then 2, as a specific point for my practice, I do plaintiff's personal injury. Most of it is car crashes. The thing that always comes up when somebody gets in a crash is, do I call the police? Should I call the police? And you should always call the police.
Oh, great tip.
And the reason why is because you want the facts documented as soon as possible. And, people's memories fade. Witnesses disappear, and when you get in an automobile accident, it's always good to just have a clear record of what happened. And some people always say, well, I don't want so-and-so to get in trouble. I want to get in trouble. Well, you're not the one determining if they get in trouble or not. It's not like you're the one making the decision. It's the police and the justice system. So all you're doing is just doing, your responsibility under the law. And actually, if you do get into an automobile crash, our law requires you to report it within 48 hours anyways. So by doing it right away, the sooner you do it, the better. You got a clear set of facts on what happened, and then whether you move forward with it, that's on you. But, that's just these simple things, again, kind of going back to what you were saying earlier, writing in a gratitude journal, not a complicated thing.
Yeah.
But and Kobe Bryant said this, right? What made Kobe Bryant such a great basketball player was that he did the simple things perfectly.
Yeah.
And
well said.
Yeah. And it's these small things like you get into a wreck, call the police, make sure, just get it documented. That is a very simple thing, but it can be a very important thing later on in the case when one witness is saying X and the other one's saying Y, and there was no police officer there to document it. So, the simple things matter.
Good point. Good point. Well, we've got to wrap up in about a minute or two. So thank you so much for being a guest on the podcast, Ryan. And that's going to wrap it up for this episode. And I always like to think about a couple of takeaways. And I love if you want to appreciate your life, don't go to a party, go to a funeral. Perfect example of something like that, where that'll give you a perspective if maybe you've lost it. And then that call a lawyer or call the police. When in doubt, go ahead and do it. And don't sweat the small stuff. Just sweat the small stuff and the big stuff. No, I shouldn't say don't sweat it, but pay attention to the large stuff and the small stuff, because it's all something to be grateful for. So just a couple of final reminders as we wrap up. Wherever you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, Google, what have you, please subscribe and give me a 5-star rating if you like what you hear. And as I said, as a reminder, I do gratitude keynote speaking and gratitude coaching, and you can get my contact information as well as Ryan's contact information if you have any questions for Ryan wearing his attorney hat. And also, if you'd like to receive my Monday Morning Minute, you can text Gratitude Guy to 22828. That's Gratitude Guy, all one word, to 22828, and you'll get my Monday Morning Minute. My guest next time will be Jennifer Matthews from Perth, Australia, and she will share some great stories of how gratitude inspired and encouraged her along the way. And then please stay tuned following my podcast, for the Empowered Through Health podcast with Diane Solana, where you can take your health to the next level, featuring a different health topic every week. That is it for this week. Thank you so much for tuning in. I am David George Brooke, that Gratitude Guy. Remember, be grateful and never quit. So long.
Take care.
Thank you for listening to That Gratitude Guy podcast with David George Brooke, where living with gratitude turns what you have into enough. Transformation starts now, and you have everything you need to achieve great things. In a world that is constantly changing, there is motivation and inspiration right in front of us, and you can find yours right now. Don't wait. Visit thatgratitudeguy.com to get started living with gratitude today.
Views expressed on this program are those of the host, guests, and callers, and do not necessarily reflect the views of the station, its management, or advertisers. You're listening to Transformation Talk Radio.